December 1944, the Ardennes. A frozen forest hiding the last desperate gamble of the Third Reich. The Allies believed the war was nearly over, but they were wrong. The Germans were about to strike with a force no one expected. In the chaos that followed, the fate of the entire Western Front would hinge on one man, General George S. Patton. His speed, his instinct, his decisions, they would shape everything. But what if Patton, the fastest general in the Allied army, had been just 24 hours late? One delayed order, one stalled convoy, one shift in weather, and the greatest American disaster of World War II might have unfolded. This is the story of the catastrophe that almost happened, the alternate Ardennes offensive, where timing changes everything. To understand what was at stake, we need to return to the real battlefield of December 1944. The Western Front had stretched thin. American divisions were exhausted, scattered across dense forests and small Belgian towns. Command believed the Germans were broken, incapable of launching a major offensive. But behind the tree line, in the frozen dark, 3 German armies were preparing to strike. Hitler's plan was simple: punch a hole through the American lines, race to the Meuse River, seize Antwerp, and split the Allied forces in 2. It was a bold, reckless assault, and the Allies didn't see it coming. Intelligence reports were ignored. Recon units misread the signs. Even as German troops massed in the snow, many commanders insisted it was impossible. That miscalculation would open the door to one of the greatest surprises of the war. And in the middle of this growing storm stood General George S. E. Patton, a man whose instincts were already telling him that something was very, very wrong. While the Allies dismissed the danger, Patton was already preparing for the worst. Unlike most commanders on the Western Front, he didn't trust the quiet in the Ardennes. The reports felt wrong. The patterns didn't make sense. German radio traffic, troop movements, supply buildups, it all pointed to something bigger. So Patton did what no one else had considered. He ordered his staff to prepare 3 separate contingency plans. While other generals believed the Germans were finished, Patton positioned his army to pivot. North, east, or west, it didn't matter. He wanted the Third Army ready to turn on a dime. Then, in a dramatic meeting with Eisenhower, Patton made a promise no one expected to hear, that he could halt his advance, wheel an entire army 90 degrees, and attack into the Ardennes in just 48 hours. Most commanders needed a week to redeploy. Patton was offering 2 days. His staff thought it was impossible. Eisenhower thought he was bluffing, but Patton had already given the orders. His divisions were ready to move before the meeting even ended. This decision, this instinct, is what changed the real history. And it's exactly why the alternative timeline begins here. History turns on small moments, a few hours, a single decision, a shift in weather. In our alternate timeline, that moment arrives on the night of December 19, 1944. A brutal wave of snow and freezing rain sweeps across the Ardennes, shutting down roads and choking visibility. Convoys stall, radio lines drop, patrols lose contact. For Patton's Third Army, already stretched and fighting on 2 fronts, the storm becomes a wall. Orders that should have moved instantly are delayed. Dispatch riders can't break through. Entire columns slow to a crawl. Instead of a rapid pivot north, the Third Army loses precious time. 6 hours, then 12, then 24. And in the chaos of the storm, the Germans seize their chance. Their armored spearheads advance faster than expected, crashing through thin American lines before reinforcements can arrive. The timing changes everything. In the real world, Patton was moving before the Germans could fully exploit their breakthrough. But here, in this altered reality, he's a day late. and that single day opens the path to a disaster the Allies were never prepared to face. With Patton delayed, the battle for the Ardennes changes instantly. The German spearheads push deeper into the American lines, striking faster and harder than anyone expected. And at the center of their advance lies a single town, Bastogne. The crossroads, the lifeline, the key to the entire region. In real history, the 101st Airborne arrived just in time to hold the town. But in this alternate timeline, the Germans reach Bastogne first. The roads are still open. The American defenders, fewer in number and lacking anti-tank support, are overwhelmed before they can dig in. By midnight, the first Panther tanks roll through the outskirts. Street fighting erupts. Paratroopers are pushed back from block to block. Cut off from resupply, without artillery support, the defenders cannot hold. Bastogne Falls, and with that single victory, the Germans secure the crossroads they desperately needed, allowing fresh units to pour westward at full speed. What was, in our real history, a stubborn American fortress becomes in this timeline the breach point that opens the Allied front like a wound. With Bastogne in German hands, the momentum of the offensive shifts dramatically. Now, the armored columns surge westward with nothing to slow them down. The narrow forest roads that once strangled their progress are suddenly open, feeding tanks, infantry, and supply trucks deeper into the American rear. American units, scattered and confused, attempt to form blocking positions, but without coordination, they're isolated and quickly overrun. German commanders realize they've achieved something that never occurred in real history, a clean breakout. By December 22nd, the spearheads reach the Meuse River, far ahead of schedule. Panic spreads across Allied headquarters. Bridges that were supposed to be defended for days fall within hours. British and American engineers rush to demolish crossings, but many are seized intact in the chaos. The German dream of splitting the Allied armies, a fantasy in the real timeline, now becomes a tangible threat. Logistics begin to unravel. Supply convoys reroute frantically. Units lose contact. For the first time since Normandy, the Allies face the possibility of a full operational collapse. Patton is still coming, but now he isn't racing to relieve Bastogne. He's racing to stop an avalanche. As German armor surges toward the Meuse, the Allied High Command is thrown into chaos. Messages conflict. Maps change by the hour. No one is sure where the front line actually is. What was once a bulge is now a widening rupture, tearing the Allied armies apart. Bradley demands reinforcements that no longer exist. Montgomery warns of a full collapse of the northern sector. Eisenhower, watching the Meuse crossings fall one after another, orders emergency defenses to be formed with anything available. Engineers, clerks, cooks, anyone who can hold a rifle. But none of this stops the advance. The German divisions, fueled by captured supplies and unexpected success, push deeper than they ever did in real history. American fuel depots fall intact. Ammunition dumps are overrun. The logistical spine of the Allied front snaps. And now, Patton's delay becomes catastrophic. When the Third Army finally reaches the outskirts of the battle, the situation has changed beyond recognition. There is no Bastogne to relieve. There is no static front to stabilize. There is only a rolling disaster, a battlefield where the Germans hold the initiative, the momentum, and the roads. Patton prepares to counterattack. But he is no longer the savior rushing to a besieged garrison. He is a general chasing an enemy that has already broken through. The consequences of Patton's delay now ripple far beyond the Ardennes. With the German breakthrough expanding, the Allies face a reality they had never anticipated. The Western Front is no longer stable. It's fractured and collapsing. As German armored divisions cross the Meuse, British commanders fear that Antwerp, the lifeline of Allied supply, may soon be within reach. If the port falls, the entire Allied advance across Western Europe could grind to a halt. Months of planning, fuel, ammunition, reinforcements, all depend on Antwerp staying open. Meanwhile, American forces struggle to form a coherent line. Units are thrown together from different divisions, speaking over clogged radio channels and fighting without clear orders. Every hour the gap widens, and every mile the Germans gain pushes the Allies closer to a logistical catastrophe. Across Europe, the Soviets watch the chaos unfold with growing interest. A prolonged German stand in the West means the Red Army advances deeper and faster into Central Europe. The post-war map begins to shift. New borders, new occupations, new tensions that will define the next half-century. In this alternate timeline, the Allies face a brutal truth. The delay of a single day has reshaped the endgame of the war, but none of this happened. Because in our real history, Patton wasn't late. He was early, impossibly early. While storms raged and intelligence faltered, Patton's Third Army was already pivoting north. His divisions were moving before many commanders even understood the scale of the German attack. In just 48 hours, he executed one of the fastest and most complex redeployments of the war, a maneuver some historians still consider impossible. And that speed changed everything. Instead of finding open crossroads and undefended roads, the Germans ran into resistance. Instead of capturing Bastogne, they found a fortress. Instead of reaching the Meuse, they were stalled, bled dry, and pushed back. The disaster we've just explored, the collapse, the lost bridges, the drive to Antwerp, all of it was prevented by hours, not days, hours. History often turns on large battles and great armies, but sometimes it turns on timing, on a single commander who moves faster than the enemy, faster than his allies, faster than the war itself. In December 1944, George Patton didn't just save Bastogne. He saved the entire Western Front. History is full of moments that almost went another way. The Ardennes could have been one of the greatest American defeats of the war, a collapse that reshaped Europe and changed the world that followed. But it wasn't, because one general refused to wait, refused to hesitate, and refused to believe the war was already won. Patton's speed closed the gap before it became a wound. His instinct turned disaster into survival, and his timing preserved the momentum that would carry the Allies to victory in 1945. If you want to explore more turning points like this, the narrow margins, the near misses, the history that almost happened, make sure you're subscribed. There are countless stories like this one, and we're just getting started.